Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Black History Month, and welcome to the welcome to the Art Center's third annual Heritage Festival. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today and kick off Black History Month with this beautiful celebration of Black excellence. I hope that those of you who have come out today and joined us, that you've enjoyed outside. Anyone? You've all been outside, right? And what do you think of outside? Okay. Yeah, give it a hand. All right, give it up. And for our guests who are online, I welcome you and thank you for joining us virtually. My name is Valerie Riles, and I'm the Vice President of Board and Government Relations here at the Art Center and a proud member of the Heritage Committee. The Center's Heritage Committee is responsible for the Heritage Project, which was created to promote social equity and to amplify Black voices. Before we begin, I want to give a special thank you to Bank of America. You can applaud on that, Bank of America, for supporting Heritage Fest and this Heritage Project Salon series. As you already know, the theme for this year's Heritage Fest is Mind, Body, and Soul. Speaking to that, this afternoon's panel discussion will focus on race, intimacy, and expression in dance. This discussion will delve into the intersectionality and overlapping identities of Black dancers and choreographers who are part of the LGBTQAI community. This afternoon, we're joined by 4 well-accomplished dance professionals, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to our moderator. Michelle Grant Murray is an associate professor and coordinator of dance at Miami-Dade College. She's also the artistic director of Jubilation Dance Ensemble. Michelle is the founder and host of the Black Artist Talk, a conversation that dialogues the creative process, politics, and preservation of Black artists in South Florida. She also is the founder and executive director of the annual Artistry and Rhythm Dance Conference presented and sponsored by Miami-Dade College. Her career has been impacted by her studies at the Alvin Ailey American Dance Center, Dance Theater of Harlem, Clark Center, and Jacob's Pillow. Her influences include notable artists and scholars such as Reginald Yates, Rennie Harris, and the legendary Miss Katherine Dunham. Currently, Michelle is researching the performative intersections of ecofeminism, ecology, and sustainability, which live in the antiquity of the Black female form. She remains fiercely committed to the developmental voice of Black female artists. I present to you Ms. Michelle Grant Murray.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to do the right thing, and I think I'm going to move over to stage left. I'm Michelle Grant Murray. Thank you all for being here today, and welcome to Miami-Dade College. Welcome to the Adrian Art Center, and I'm so glad to be here. And we have our guest, our wonderful guest, and they're going to introduce themselves. And so here we are. Thank you to the Adrian Art Center for bringing us here. I'm so delighted to have this conversation and to engage and have some fun. And so definitely this is a conversation. So we were having a little talk backstage in our little makeshift green room over there, and I said sometimes we go into these conversations and the panelists get enthused and we have fun just talking amongst ourselves, and the conversation becomes performative. And so I'm really interested in more engagement so that we can have a real conversation. I have a request. Could a few of you just move over to this side so that we're a little bit balanced, if you don't mind? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Now we have some things going on. We don't have a one-sided circle. Spacing is very important for dancers. Spacing and timing.
Yes, it is.
Space, time, and dimension and energy is everything. So without any further ado, we're going to move on down and they're going to introduce themselves. And so Erin is first. Thank you.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Aaron Lopez. Yes, I feel nice and balanced now. This is beautiful. I am born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, and Puerto Rico. I moved to Miami maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where I was able to build a dance career here and start basically over from nothing. I don't have any family here, so it was cool getting immersed into the culture here, seeing the difference between where I was raised and here in Miami specifically. We'll get into that a little bit more. But other than that, I love being in Miami. I love the culture here. I love the people here. And I'm excited to grow with the city.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Terence Pride, and let's see, I'm a dance educator and a performer. I've been in Miami for about 2 years now. I'm originally from a very small town called Quincy, Florida. It's right outside of the capital of Florida, Tallahassee. And yeah, that is about it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Cola Gutierrez. I was born in Cuba, Havana. From there, I moved to Ghana for 5 years. My mom is Cuban and my dad's Ghanaian, so therefore the trajectory. From there, we moved to Cape Verde, where we lived 9 years, and then we came to the U.S., where I've currently been for 10 years. I'm a dancer, performer, choreographer, educator, and instructor, and I'm currently based in Miami.
So we have a well-rounded group of young people here to have this conversation with, and I'm looking in the audience and I see some intergenerational wealth as well, and I'm very grateful for that. So please take time and reflect and dig in, and let's have a great conversation. One of the first things that I wanted to do is actually define and talk about what dance is. Okay, I just lost that. Okay, so dance is, for me, a universal, not just a global, but a universal means of expression. It carries the history and culture of groups of people, right? And when I say universal, I'm talking about the movement goes beyond the galaxy. It goes beyond the spoken word. There are things that we can express in dance that do not exist in language. And that is very important to understand, specifically within the Black body. Right. So in order to have anything that is of color, anything that is magnificent, Black must come first, because everything comes out of the Black hole. So we must have Black first. And dance comes out of that. So we're going to enter into that into our conversation today with that. And I have a couple of questions, but please, don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask, and let us know that you have a comment in regard to the questions, or it's something that the panelists are saying. Is there a microphone for the audience, or how is that working? You have to use microphone 1. Which is microphone 1, mine? Oh, I'm glad I know how to project. Okay. Okay, no problem. Thank you. So the first question that we had, when I received this invitation, and I'm going to be very honest, do you mind? Okay. When I received this invitation, it came with a host of articles, a list of articles that I needed to research and things that I needed to be aware of. And everything was surrounding LGBTQAI and plus. And I looked at it, and my initial first thought was, ooh, am I the right person for that conversation? Right? I've been in this business for a long time, professionally since I was 16 years old, and I'm 56 right now, so for a very, very long time. So my experiences are vast and deep. And at the time, at 16, I was being called queer, and it had a very different meaning. So it's very interesting for me to be in this conversation at 56 and hear queer with a new definition, and I'm still trying to figure that out. So I asked the panelist, yes, because those of us who, if you thought differently in my age, and I was born at the height of the Civil Rights Movement in 1965, if you thought differently and you were doing your own thing, she's a little queer, she's different. And I was okay with being different. I'm okay with that. So I've asked the panelists to please define, because we go into these things with lots of assumptions that everyone knows what the initials mean. What is the acronym? And that's not always true. We're making assumptions already. So let's break it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, LGBTQAI plus, right? I feel like every year they add more year, but it's more important because I think it adds awareness into what's already been going on this entire time, right? I'm sure when back in the day it had a bigger stigma. Now what's going on more is everything's so social media pressed, right? So if everyone were to say, "Oh, that's gay," yeah, that takes effect to kids growing up. You know what I mean? Especially me personally. I was raised by a lot of cousins and brothers. I only had one sister, but I was surrounded by guys a lot. So I had a certain expectation to carry through. But I wanted to dance. Like I played volleyball growing up. I played soccer growing up. My cousins played football, basketball. They played more of the manlier sports. And I tagged along. Just so I could make sure I fit my role. But then I realized I was like, why am I doing this role that I don't want to play? Why am I pretending to do or enjoy things that I don't want to enjoy? And I think that is kind of really important. I think discovering that at a very young age, what road you want to take, and it's going to be very misleading. It's going to be very confusing. There's a lot of times where you don't know exactly who is your actual friend. You're going in there, you're growing up, you're saying, I don't know if I should open up to this person because I don't know if they're going to make fun of me. I don't know if they're going to accept exactly who I am exactly. So you try to play in cliques. You try to stay in cliques, and I think what that does is it creates like a shade or like a shadow that you try to protect from yourself. And then you grow up later and then you realize, I should have explored myself. I should have explored a little bit more back. I should have really just not cared and just gave it everything I had. Now that's at the stage that I'm at now. What LGBT means to me now, it doesn't mean the same thing to me back in the day. Back in the day, I was super scared of it. I was just like, I don't want to embrace it. I don't want to learn anything about it. I just want to stay focused, straight in my mentality. Right now, I embrace it. Now I'm able to walk around. I'm like, you know what? This is who I am. I walk around and getting that education, knowing where you come from is very, very important as well. And I think that's something that we're missing.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great, Aaron. It's great. All right. I don't even know what to say now. I'm joking. Okay, so for me, LGBTQAI plus is the evolution of a movement, right? I think that, as we've already stated, we started it in one place, and as the letters evolved, and as the people evolved, as society evolves, as the government continues to change, I think that it's necessary for us and for everyone to begin to acknowledge and to evolve with the people and the times, right? And that, like we were saying, with each letter, there's a new sense of representation, right? And so even the flag now, because, I forget when exactly it was adapted, but, having the rainbow flag to be a symbol of the LGBTQ community, and then seeing recently the additions to that particular flag, specifically because of it being seen, I guess, as a not necessarily acknowledging the Black community when it comes down to those individuals who identify as being, gay, lesbian, whatever the case may be. And so I think that for me, what it means is, we are evolving as a people, right? That the movement is gaining momentum and that we're progressing forward, right? That's what it means for me.
Yes, so great, both definitions. For me, I would say, coming from heterosexual woman, and I think that's also an important voice inside of the panel, I actually was also, being honest, questioning at first. I was like, me, I don't know. But after speaking with the coordinator, I realized that, yes, it's important to have a voice inside of this matter. So for me, LGBTQIA+, is really a space for individuals to be able to express, explore, identify who they are without having to be molded inside of a box. I think before just having maybe, the term gay or lesbian, again, because of the different iterations and the different levels and complexities of who we are as people, it really gives people the space and time to be able to fully find themselves and who they are, and have validation for that as well. And so I also wanted to talk about a little bit in terms of my experience. I didn't really know the term, and I wasn't necessarily introduced to the LGBTQAI A plus community until I got to the U.S. because, I mean, also growing up, that wasn't necessarily in Cape Verde or in Cuba, which is another subject of conversation in its own. It's not necessarily something that we were exposed to. We knew it existed, we knew it happened, but it wasn't open. Like, it wasn't the conversations open like we're having today, that are more resonant. So for me, that was, when coming to the U.S. and getting to know what the term and understanding more inside of the community, I feel like it didn't necessarily, because again, I was also coming from a place of inclusivity. I thought it was great to have the term, and I thought it was something that it was needed, and that definitely more conversations were needed in this space so that we can, talk to each other really in regards to what are the details and what are the different intricacies of how we exist. So that's a little bit about the background.
Great, thank you. It's interesting being a mature black woman inside of the space who's danced most of her life. All of my adult life I've been dancing, and having this conversation with these young people. And I see that there are some other dancers in the room too that are my generation and maybe above. We don't really care, to be honest. I mean, we're interested in, are you doing the work, and are you capable of doing the work? At the end of the day, you have to be able to come into the room and do the work. It's silent. But really and truly, it's about are you able to come in and do the work that a dancer, a performer, a creator needs to do to tell the story? And then why are we telling the story? And how are we telling the story? That is the most essential part of the conversation for me, I'm speaking personally. And if anybody has anything to say to that, then it's an open mic. I welcome your conversation. Yes.
I have no idea what AI plus means.
Okay. Would anybody like to define AI plus?
Artificial intelligence?
That part.
So the addition to it is, I know the A is for ally, right? So not anyone who necessarily, identifies as gay, bi, whatever. You're an ally, right? You're standing and you're saying, I acknowledge you for who you are and whatever that may be. And then the I believe, is for,
Intersectional? Intersectional.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, if I would define it in my own terms, it would be what I think is considered pansexual, right? You can agree or disagree with me, but that's my definition. Yeah.
It's interesting to have the conversation in Miami because Miami is such a misogynistic community. Did she just say that out loud? I did. I did, and this is a conversation that I have all the time. Miami has machismo things going on inside of this community, and to have a conversation like this, and I appreciate your vulnerability, all of you, and your honesty. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Thank you. Because they didn't have to do that. Like, people don't have to do that. It's very interesting. So when we, as a person who travels, and I travel quite a bit, and I'm in different spaces with different people from all over the world, the way in which people are identifying, it happens. At the college that I teach at, when I ask people to identify, they cannot identify. They can't even say whether they're black, Cuban, Haitian, African American. Needless to say, if we ask you, are you she, he, they, her, his, they don't know what that means. They've never heard that before. They have never heard that before. And by the time they get to college and they're hearing that information for the first time, and then they have to leave me, and go into the world and have these same conversations in spaces like Bard, one of the #1 universities in the United States of America, in upstate New York, where if you cannot identify someone with you are suspended from school or you pay a fine. So what are we talking about with our young people? Are we really, really preparing them to enter into the world? And yes, I know that Miami is a different space. It's another part of the Caribbean that's actually, it's just attached to the United States of America. But Miami specifically, I know, is another part of the world. It's its own space. And so how are we engaging inside of that space? How are we preparing our community to enter into the world? How are we preparing our young Black sisters and brothers to go into the world? So there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to keep going and keep pressing because I also want to hear your voice as well. One of the things that I wanted to discuss is this idea of being in Black space. One of the questions that came to us dealt with what is it like to be the only one, and I needed to reverse that and ask what is it like to be inside of all Black space, dancing and moving your body.
I could kind of go with both of those questions and answers as well too. Growing up as an Afro-Latino, a lot of the times being in a Black community as well, I am now Black, you know what I mean? Or if I were to go into a white community, oh, he's just a Black guy, you know what I mean? Rather than embracing my Latino side, right? So it's a constant struggle for me sometimes where I'm at and acknowledging who I am, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, of course, I embrace my Blackness, I embrace my Africanness, of course, but I'm also a Latino, and I also embrace that as well. And growing up in Puerto Rico, I was able to embrace that as well. Being here in Miami, growing up in Boston, I lived in like a little Puerto Rico city, so like everyone knew me, everyone knew who I was. Coming down to Miami, it's a lot, light tone, light skin Latinos, a lot of different hair pattern, they look different compared to how I look here in Miami. So I'm also a commercial dancer, I tour with artists and Spanish artists specifically. And one thing I do notice is that when I go to some auditions or when I do some award shows, I am the only dark-skinned Latino, the guy there, compared to the other light-skinned, white Latinos there as well. I'm also been in situations where I was just in Atlanta 2 weeks ago, and we were getting ready to do I can't remember the gigs. It was a music video, I can't remember for who. However, we were all Black there, and it was a totally different energy compared to how I would have expected it here in Miami, you know what I mean? I just think that wherever you are, it kind of influences based off the culture of the city. You know what I mean? Miami is very a culture pot of different cultures compared to Atlanta, where it's predominantly Black. You know what I mean? So when I'm here, I noticed it a lot more here. Whereas I'm like, okay, I feel like an outsider sometimes. I feel like I don't really sit well, or I just feel awkward in some situations, or they may look at me and say, oh, you don't look like the typecast of the next person next to you. You know what I mean? I get that a lot here in Miami, especially in a lot of Latino gigs that I do. I don't look like the typical Latino, and so because of that, I don't get booked with the Spanish artist, right? And same thing with Black culture. If I were to have been in that situation in Atlanta, and they needed a predominantly Black-looking guy, I have my look, but I may not have the jail look that they may be looking for, whatever jail-specific look that they're looking for when I was in Atlanta at the time. But one thing I did notice is that there is differences, which is a shame, and it's such a shame to think that, but it does, sometimes you do notice that difference in the room, and getting over that is just one thing you have to do, is just keep looking forward, But how was your experience?
So, wow. I think I want to start with just, so being in Black space, right? And I think that the first thing that comes to mind is my learning, right? And I'm a graduate of Florida A&M University. Thank you very much. Great. I see you. There we go. And and I want to say I'm so appreciative of it. I actually would have never have thought to venture to Florida A&M University I got my degree in theater, And so I act, dance, I'm a performer. And I went to Florida State University first. And I mean, besides the culture being different, teachers, staff being different, being in a space, a black space, gives us opportunity, and identifying as a black individual gives us opportunities to learn about who we are and to further find ways to identify ourselves and to identify with our culture, right? Being in a space that's not, black, oftentimes I would find myself, I think the term that we use now is code switching, right? I'd find myself always, comparing and being compared. And honestly,
Love that word.
It's really, the thought is that whole stigma of, being 10 times as good. You have to be 10 times as good just to, be in the room and hold that particular space without any real reverence for who you are as an individual and for your culture and for the art form that you're actually learning, right? And I say that because if we're truly going to be in this particular space, and let's just say it's dance, and I'm learning about dance, then how am I in this space uncomfortable, not able to truly identify with who I am, not really learning anything about my culture, when my culture is actually where the root of dance begins, right? And so I got most of the knowledge that I have about, salsa and merengue and, and where this move comes from and, and West African dance and how just all of these things tied together and where it's rooted at, dancing with predominantly black dance companies or during my training at Florida A&M University. And so I think it's important, and you get this sense of richness when you're in black space. You begin to identify with who you are, where you come from, what you can do, where you're going, that you are actually more significant than you would have probably thought you were before, right? And you learn that you have more connections to other individuals and to other cultures that you obviously wouldn't have learned in a non-black space, because all you're doing there is comparing yourself as being the only one in the room that looks the way that you look, right? So I really don't have time, or really do the teachers even have the wherewithal to be able to teach me, right, that I belong in this space and that I can hold, other things besides just, oh, well, I got the best, party do in this place, so I ain't got to worry about nobody, taking my spot, or I've trained all day.
It's a bit more than the wherewithal. Do they have the knowledge?
Right.
That part.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so, yeah, it's for me, it's definitely being able to have that discovery, right, and to grow, not as just, an artist and in my training, but as an individual and as a person.
And doesn't it feel weird when you code switch, when you have to feel like, you have to read the room first, and you're like, okay,
no, I
this
don't
is the
read the
face
room.
I have.
I don't read the room.
No, see, unfortunately, I do.
The room needs to read me.
No, I see. I totally hear that.
I totally hear that.
I totally hear that. I totally hear that.
You get into an audition. First of all, going to what Arian said earlier about being in a space like Atlanta. Like I tell a lot of my students nowadays, I'm like, we're at a space where we're beyond, the nice bodies and all this. Like, everybody in Atlanta has a nice body. Everybody in Atlanta can dance. Everybody can. So what else do we have to offer? And, I think that, again, like being in those kind of spaces, you wanna have something else like to hold on to and to give you motivation to continue to be in this business. Like if you're going into a room every single day, and it's okay, I'm not, how many black people are going to be in this audition? Because that's the flip side of it. Being in black spaces, it's like, oh, well, they only want one black person. It's 500 of us. I guess I'll just go home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go to Melissa, and then we have a comment.
Sure.
Thank you.
So for me, I would say black space for me really set the foundation of who I am. I was going to say was who I am, not yet. Who I am as an artist. So coming back to my training in dance, I started in a program which was Miami-Dade College Kendall campus actually, that is rooted in blackness and also in diversity. And that's another thing that I also want to reference in terms of what Aaron said about being here in Miami and experiencing these different, having these different experiences inside of identifying himself as an Afro-Latino. But going back to my experience, so being in that program really allowed me to root myself and find, like Terence was saying, who I was. I mean, for me, life is a process of self-discovery. So even now, there's things that I'm still discovering, and I think that's going to be forever. But I think that really having that opportunity to explore and have the space, and also the support in the community, which is one of the things that Black Space holds the most, is that sense of community, allowed me to know. And so when I transferred to Florida State University to get my degree in dance, my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dance, even though I wasn't the only one in the space. There was a few of us, but we still weren't the majority. And I feel like that training and background that I was coming from, the program that rooted me, already set that tone for me, so that when I went there, I didn't feel completely lost. I felt like I had a sense of identity already of who I was as an artist and what did I want to accomplish with my work. In terms of diversity in Miami, I would say that that term it can become a little tricky for me, because I think Miami hides a lot in diversity. There's a lot of oppression of blackness inside of diversity, especially when referring to me specifically, to the Cuban community, which is the community that I often refer to because it's where I come from. And I actually, right now, I'm working on a project that talks about the same thing, about the invisibilization of the oppression of blackness inside the Miami Cuban community. As some of you might know, or maybe for facts, the Miami Cuban community is predominantly white. And so when you go to Cuba, you see Black Cubans everywhere, and people are like, are we really in Cuba? Is this what the country looks like? Yes.
Puerto Rico too.
Right, exactly. And so there's a misconception here in Miami, and there's a lot of things that need to be deconstructed inside of our own community when it comes to diversity, because yes, we say we're diverse, but in reality there's a lot of oppression and a lot of discrimination and microaggressions and racism happening, and that's something that we need to really work on that. We have a lot of work to do inside of that. So
Yes, we have a comment here, then 2, then 3. Perfect.
I haven't fully formed my thoughts, but I just think the first conversation about LGBTQAI+, as well as Black spaces, it just makes me think about how many layers we are as a person. And when you're in a space where there's true embracement of the layers of who we are as people, then you really can see who you are. And I think it's so situational, because if I'm in white spaces, I'm Black. When it comes to Black spaces, if I'm in the continent, I'm now American. If I'm here in America, I'm Jamaican. If I'm among, or I'm Caribbean. If I'm among Caribbeans, then I'm Jamaican. So there's so many layers, and until you get into spaces that appreciate the layers and allow to peel back even further. And just hearing the comments, I've lived lots of places, so if I go to New York, I'm a Floridian, but when I'm here in Miami, I'm not from Miami originally, so it's like, so there's all these layers to who we are as people, and it's so important for us to be able to be in spaces where we can celebrate that.
I totally agree with that. I totally could relate with you. I've been in a lot of places, and unfortunately, I don't think I've ever said this out loud. Wow. But with the code switching thing that we do, I work jobs where I have to not pretend, but just I have to be straight. I can't mention that I'm bisexual, that I'm gay. I can't mention that, or if just hanging out with a bunch of guys, we're all talking about, oh, look at that girl over there, look at that girl over there. So it kind of puts me into this box that I'm like, yeah, she looks good. Yeah, she looks good. But, in my head, I'm just like, yeah, she looks good, but you look good too. I'm like, but, but no, I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying,
No, you're not.
But I'm saying, though, you know what I mean? It's just one of those codes where wherever you are at, it depends on what you're labeled. You know what I mean? I think that sucks. I think, when I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, I'm Black. If I speak Spanish to my mom, they look at me like I'm the most foreign guy ever. You know what I mean? So it sucks where you are, depending on where you are. and what hat you have to put on. You know what I mean? I think that's where I always say, like, I'm a man of many hats, but in a way that's kind of me being defensive about who I really am, you know, and I think it sucks, but yeah, I hear you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that comment, and thank you, Aaron. Yes?
I have a comment and a question. The comment, of course, would be on all of the letters that are associated with gender, etc., because I find it amusing. The same thing was done with race in terms of black. You're mulatto, you're mestizo, in terms of what you were saying, that would be transnationalism, because we do represent so many different layers, and the human mind wants to understand. So it has to put us in these little categories that are not always distinct. That aside, let's go to the blackness. Maybe a decade ago, I went to watch a show from South Africa, and I was excited about my children. Let's go, we're going to watch this fabulous show. And we got there, and they were dancing. It was a beautiful show, but the performers were white, and they were doing African dance. And for me, I was like, no. And my daughter looked at me and she said, well, Mom, I think you're wrong, because if we can do ballet, why can't they do dance? And I said, well, we perform not just from skill, we perform from core. What would you say about that?
So here goes this term of they're all like education, because there is so much misconception about these ideas of Eurocentric, westernized ballet. Ballet, not even ballet, and what the term actually means. The word ballet actually means a story or a plot. One of the most beautiful ballet companies that I've ever seen in my life that tells the most incredible story has been the Senegalese Ballet Company out of Senegal. Incredible. So this idea of if we can do ballet, then why can't they do African? So that's a level of appropriation as well. And I know that there are a lot of people right now that are probably sitting and looking at their television. Oh, they're probably hitting me up. They light me up on Facebook. How dare she say that? I said it. That's a level of appropriation as well. And it's appropriation because they're not giving acknowledgement to where the information, the core of the information and the root of the information and where it actually came from. So, no, not the company. I'm talking about the ballet companies. I'm talking about the ballet schools. A woman who was just sitting here, she just went out to see the dance company, I'm sure, was one of the most incredible African dance companies in the world. Her name is Anita Macbeth, and she danced with Baba Chuck Davis for years. She was probably in his first company. An amazing, 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 amazing woman. And something came up on Instagram yesterday too from an organization here in the state of Florida, I'm not going to call any names, where they had a group of white dancers dressed in their lapa and their gele, performing in an image African dance. I got a call at 7 o'clock in the morning. What is this? I was like, well, let's take a look at it, ask some questions. And it was removed immediately. Because even though they're giving appropriation, they're giving acknowledgement, okay, so then they're giving acknowledgement and they're performing this thing. Who were the teachers? How many other black people could have been working inside of their own work and taking care of their own families and levels of sustainability? Who went without for them to have what we do, who we are?
If I can chime in on the conversation, I think that I love your example because I read a lot about them in my research in regards to negritude and how their company is established and rooted in negritude. And I want to say, in regards to your point, I used to work on a cruise ship. I danced on a cruise ship, and I want to say maybe about 50% of the employees on that ship were African, or South African rather, and they did not look like me. Okay, and I thought that I just had a conversation. I was very intrigued. I was interested. I wanted to know. I have not been to South Africa. I've read a lot. I've done a lot of research. However, in regards to, and we were kind of just having a conversation about appropriation and things of that nature. And I believe that, as I said then, it becomes appropriation when the acknowledgement isn't there and the teaching and the learning isn't there. But if the acknowledgement, it has been acknowledged, and you know, and you know, you have the proper teachers, and you know, and the learning is there, I don't think it should matter what color they are to perform it. I think that the more we expose individuals to culture and have an appreciation for that particular culture, I think that you know, there's learning to be had, and I think that's the only way that we'll begin to create communities that will be more, you know, transnational. Which what she's trying to say is, you know, I have to identify as this, or if I'm in this group, or if I'm in that group. And that only happens because we are not a learned community. You know, we're not exposed to various cultures and different cultures and learning how to appreciate them as opposed to appropriating, you know, their culture. I do not think that, you know, if, you know, someone takes the time, you know, to come and do, gosh, what were they just learning out there in the courtyard? Compa, yes, and you know, they're out there and they're learning it. It's like it's exposing them to culture and it's teaching them that particular culture. And if a person is ignited by that, right, and they love it, and you know, whatever it is. I love tango. I just saw a show the other day, Tango Fire. I want to get up on stage and I want to do it, right? And you know, although those performers were, you know, all of them were, you know, Hispanic or you know, from Hispanic descent, you know, I would love you know, to get a whole bunch of, you know, black dancers up on stage to do some tango. I think we got a lot of feistiness and a lot of fire in ourselves as well, you know. And so I think that to end it, you know, it's about the learning, right? It's the learning, it's the teaching, and it's the acknowledgement. A lot of people have gotten into this whole thing with land acknowledgements, you know, acknowledging who took the space before you. You know, it's just about acknowledging and having an appreciation for that particular representation, for that person, for that presence, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's enough.
Thank you. We had one other comment here. Mm-hmm.
The camera can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. The photo line can't hear.
It's the...
Yes.
And the young man is from Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So I am raising, I call her Afro-Rican.
Afro-Rican.
She's 11 years old in the arts. She's at a performing middle school arts, middle school, and desiring to go into theater. Do you have any suggestions? Because I worry a lot about her self-esteem. And when you mention about having to conform and you fit in this place and fit in that, and sometimes I think she struggles with that when we're doing her hair and all. So do you have any tips for her going into the performance world and also being Afro-Rican or Puerto Rican and African? And like, for example, I'm bringing her to this, and I'm also going to take her to Kaya Ocho to make sure I kind of expose her to both, having the Sweet 16 and the Kinsey. So I'm trying to learn myself coming from an all-black, you know, family.
One of the first suggestions that I would make is that she reads this book, Fire Under My Feet. The first article, The Gaze of Power, Rebel Bodies, and the Specter of Savagery. And it's about being African American and Puerto Rican.
It just came out about 2 months ago. Please get this book for your daughter. Fire Under My Feet. History, Race, and Agency in the African Diaspora Dance. And defining what is the diaspora. We're using this language, and language is really powerful in the way that we use language. But our young people, our people, period, human beings, are we really understanding the definition of words? Are we really able to deconstruct words? That's a larger issue inside of Miami. We're talking and we're saying these things and we're talking about diversity, but are we really studying the epistemology of language and what that means? And then how is it happening, even inside of the learning process? Because if I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I count that same 8 in Japanese, I count that same 8 in Portuguese, and I count that same 8 in Spanish, each one of those languages is going to have a different accent on the movement because those are Romance languages. So there's a thing to it. right? So dance, honey, dance. Dance.
Did you want you first, ladies? No, well, the only thing I would say is that it's a struggle, but I think it comes with power at the same time. You know, like we have a special power about us, that we have two cultures in us that brings our natural fire out, you know. And I think when you're in a room with other people that don't look like you, what's very special is, okay, what can I bring to the table? You know, especially here in Miami, where I do a lot of gigs where I am the darker of most of the groups that I do. I'm like, okay, what do I bring to the table? How can I execute things a little bit more powerful to where I stand out, right? Either if I'm the tallest guy in the room, or if I'm the shortest guy in the room, if I'm the skinniest guy in the room. All those things I battle constantly. It's a constant battle. It's a constant fight. But one thing I always say is you have to remain strong personally, right? You have to know that no matter what anybody has to say, first of all, who cares? You know what I mean? Like it's, you know where you came from, you know your battle, you know your struggle. Don't let other people influence that, right? You know, especially when it comes to auditions, especially when it comes to doing work, you know, you're there for yourself, you're there for your benefits. How can you benefit from yourself? You know, other people are going to say their comments, other people are going to say what they need to say, but you know what works for you. When I was in college at New Worlds, my hair is afro-y, but they wanted all the guys to have a low hair so we could all wear a hat, right? The only way I could do that is if I have braids. But the next piece that I was in didn't want braids. They wanted my hair in a bun. They wanted my hair in a different thing. So it became a conflict of, okay, well, I'm not changing my hair. So you got to figure out what it is, because I could either not be in that piece, or we could just change things around. Because, you know, there's a foot that you got to put down. You know, eventually there's where you have to stand. You're like, this is who I am. You know, you have to accept it. You have to accept it, and it comes with it. Because then after that, once you show that power, they'll conform to you. They'll acknowledge you. Same thing with your friends too. Once you realize your worth, the friends that you want are the ones that are going to stick with you. You know, your friends are the ones that are actually there with you, complimenting you, saying like, "Girl, you did that. Girl, you did that thing." You know, so those are the ones that you need to pay attention to, not the ones that obviously have things to say, because they got other problems too. So. But.
Yes, absolutely. I want to piggyback you off of that too. Definitely, I would say, and I mean, on the world that we live in, you're gonna encounter microaggressions. I mean, that's just a fact. And I think for me, first thing that I'm gonna offer is, you said you're the mom, correct? Yeah. Okay, so you as the mom already having that initiative, it's a stepping stone for her, because a lot of the times what's happening in my own experience is that we didn't really talk about these things, or it wasn't so pretty much like when I started high school, when I started middle school, when I started college, that's when I started to discover, specifically in college, who I was as a Black Cuban. It wasn't something that we were talking at home, so I think you as the mom already doing that and helping her and making her understand that she's beautiful and that she has all that she needs for herself, it's a stepping stone. The second thing I'm going to offer, which is similar to what you said about community, find the people that you know you can trust. In my case, and you know, I mean, sometimes this is sad to say, but even here in Miami, in my case, when I first started high school, I didn't necessarily identify myself with the Cuban community, because as a Black person in my high school, majority of the Cubans were white. And so, you know, when they looked at me always as, "You're sure you're Cuban?" They always said that I was Dominican, because they assumed Dominicans are the only ones who are Black. Yes. So, "Are you sure you're Cuban?" So in reality, I didn't really find my people until I got to college and I entered Black space. And that's really what I felt that I belonged, right? It's not to say that, you know, my Afro-Cubans or Cuban community can do that, but I just mean that make sure that you're, even if it's a few people, who's mentoring you, who are you trusting the things that you want. And I mean, just know that sometimes you are going to be the only one in the space, but you can always go back to the other space that's going to help you to nurture yourself. So that's a little bit.
Thank you, Melissa. And I just have one other thing to say before we close out, and I say thank you to all of you. Make sure that your daughter has a teacher that looks like her.
Yes.
As a conservatory-trained Black woman, born and raised in the Deep South, Texas, my white ballet teacher could not tell me how to fix my bun. She couldn't tell me the color of eyeshadow that I needed to wear. there were certain things that needed to come from Blackness. And I'm so thankful that I had a family that was supportive and understood that. And I had a ballet teacher and a modern teacher and dance teachers that understood that and valued that. And didn't try to contradict that either. So make sure that she has a teacher that looks like her. We need to do more of these conversations for our people. Black people have a lot of work to do. And I'll leave you with that, and I want to say thank you for coming out today. I appreciate you all, and I wish you well. Be well and be safe.
Thank you. Again, thank you on behalf of the Art Center for joining us, and that was a powerful, powerful, powerful conversation. And we hope that you'll join us at our next Salon series, which is on April the 20th. And the theme for that one is exploring Caribbean DJ and their influence. So that's going to be a fun one. Put on your dancing shoes and get ready to move. I now encourage you all to go to the plaza, for Miss Kaylin Arnold, who is our headliner this evening. Again, thank you for coming out. And please give these panelists another hand. Thank you.